Moneycontrol and Mirae Asset Mutual Fund present Passively Proactive.
We all invest to secure our future, and the best way to do that is to invest in the future. It basically means identifying themes or trends that are expected to gain prominence in the future and investing in them. Now, these trends can be recognized by studying developments in the society, technology, economics, or specific regions. So when it comes to investing based on a theme or a trend, it is very important to catch some of the themes early, and as any theme grows and unfolds, one gets the advantage of carrying on with the growth of that theme. Hello and welcome to Passively Proactive in association with Mirae Asset Mutual Fund. I'm your host Karunya Rao, and joining me today on the show is Siddharth Srivastava. He's the head ETF products of Mirae Asset Investment Managers India Private Limited. Today on the show, we discuss everything about thematic investing and what is it and how should investors think about it. Siddharth, welcome to the show. And the first and foremost thing we want to know is what is thematic investing and why is it growing so much globally as a trend?
So Karunya, you have already mentioned it that thematic investing focuses on long-term structural trends and seeks to capitalize on it. So unlike focusing on market cap segments or a particular sector, it focuses on a certain idea or certain trends which are emerging. For example, in India, consumption is a theme, infra and logistic is a theme. But globally, a lot of interesting developments have taken place. And as you mentioned, a lot of disruptive technologies have emerged. And in thematic investing, the idea is that you identify those emerging trends as soon as possible and invest in it, right? Because it is important to enter into a theme at a right time so that you get the benefit of that theme disrupting and ultimately taking hold of a particular sector or a particular industry. And that is what is happening globally, that a lot of investors are keen to invest in such themes like EVs, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, cybersecurity, etc.
But, I think the most obvious question that would come to your mind is how is thematic investing different from market cap funds or even sectoral funds? Because you were just mentioning about certain sectors as well. And how is that different then when it comes to thematic investing?
So a market cap fund basically focuses on selecting company from a pool which is basically created based on market cap, right, or size. Whereas sector funds focuses on selecting and investing in companies from a particular sector itself, like let's say a banking fund. A thematic fund, since it seeks to capitalize on an idea, the investments can be in companies across market cap segments and across sectors. For example, a consumption theme, you'll find funds which are not only investing in consumer companies, but also in NBFCs and retail banks, which are basically helping consumer take loans and consume more, right? So thematic funds, unlike the other two, cut across the geographies, market cap segments, sectors, etc. That is how they are different. And one very interesting thing also is, and it is very important to know, is that thematic funds can be constructed in a very different manner.
Okay.
For example, I mentioned consumption, right? A consumption-based thematic fund, one fund can only focus on consumer companies, whereas another fund, from an investment objective point of view, can focus on not only consumer companies, but also on ancillaries which aids in consumption, let's say retail banks or NBFCs.
Okay. You've mentioned quite a few themes, already in the conversation, but which are the ones that are gaining most popularity right now and maybe in the foreseeable future?
So till now, consumption, thematic funds have been dominated by older themes like consumption, which I have mentioned several times. ESG is one theme which gained a lot of traction globally in last couple of decades. But now, since there are so many changes which are happening on the technology side especially, and it is changing the way things are created and the way things are consumed. And because of these new developments, a lot of interesting themes have come up. EVs is one example. Robotics and artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, cloud computing. Clean tech is one more theme which is gaining a lot of popularity globally. And because of these new ideas which have emerged, we are seeing more and more funds which are being launched. For example, in 2021 alone, 475 ETFs were launched globally, and right now more than 1,000 thematic ETFs are available for investment across the globe.
You were talking about EVs. Now, that has been a big talking point, not only locally, but globally as well. How are things panning out in the global market when it comes to this particular theme, and where are we placed right now as far as India is concerned?
So when it comes to themes, I think EV is probably the most visible one.
Yeah.
As soon as we see a green number plate, we associate that car with an electric car, right? And that is one change we know is happening, but the question is rather how soon it will happen rather than if it will happen. EV is gaining more popularity because, as I mentioned, the change is happening and people are very keen to invest in that ecosystem. Because when you talk about EV as an ecosystem, you talk about not only electric vehicle manufacturers, but companies which provide batteries to electric vehicles, companies which are involved in lithium mining, companies which are involved in producing chemicals which are used for battery manufacturing, and the tech companies also which are providing
So the entire supply chain.
Entire supply chain. So at times the interest is to invest in the entire ecosystem, or at times more specifically in, let's say, only in lithium companies or only in battery manufacturing companies. One data which people focuses a lot on is that in 2018, EV market share was just 2.2%. In just 4 years, 2021, the market share was around 8.6%. Around 6.5 million vehicles were sold in 2021, and the expectations are that by 2030, almost 30 to 50 million vehicles will be sold, which will be EV vehicles. So people are very keen to catch up. The only thing which people should always focus on is that whether you are entering into a particular theme at the right time. Has the run-up already happened, and is your risk profile aligned to the underlying portfolio of a concerned thematic product?
Right. If one wants to indeed play the EV theme, how should you get exposure to global funds? Because there are restrictions, there are limitations to that. So what's the best way to play the theme?
So yes, SEBI has placed restriction on mutual fund industry regarding investment in overseas securities, because overall limit of $7 billion was about to be breached. But since then, it has allowed certain global funds to open up if there has been redemption, and that redemption has created a room in that concerned fund. So some schemes have opened up to fill up that buffer or room, but I think it will close again as soon as that buffer is filled. So it's very small room. But then there is additionally a fund of funds which invest in overseas ETFs.
Yeah.
And that category is still open because a separate $1 billion limit applies. So you'll probably find some global funds which are available for investment via that route. Additionally, LRS is also one route through which investors can invest in overseas mutual fund or in stocks directly if they want to basically capitalize on this trend of investing in thematic products.
But why do you think passive investing is the way to go when it comes to thematic investing? Why should we opt for that?
So both passive funds as well as active funds are neither is, let's say, wrong, but what typically happens in thematic investment is that there's a lot of different ways to invest in a particular theme. For example, as I mentioned, in consumption, the portfolio can vary. The portfolio can be solely based on consumer companies, but it can also be based on consumer companies plus ancillaries, right? And that is one thing which passive product addresses. Through its very transparent methodology, it provides a visibility to the investor that what sort of sectoral exposure, what sort of country exposure, what sort of company exposure my fund will have. And that visibility typically helps investor to decide whether this thematic product is right for me or not. And secondly, typically on the passive side, thematic products come at a lower cost, and the active fund manager risk is not there. So that also in a way helps passive compared to the active thematic funds.
We've talked about the upsides, but what about the risks associated to thematic investments, and what kind of investors is it most appropriate for?
So that is one thing we typically talk a lot about, because while it can be very trendy, rather to invest in a thematic products, EV especially, or cybersecurity or cloud computing, the name sounds very fancy,
Yeah.
but it is important to understand what that product is bringing to your entire portfolio before going ahead and investing in it. See, thematic products are constructed very differently compared to a market cap based product or a sectoral product. Even within a theme, a product can be constructed in a very different manner, and we have talked about it earlier. So the underlying portfolio can vary significantly, and so will the return and risk profile. So for an investor, it is first important to understand whether the product construct is as per the requirement which he or she has. And secondly, from a theme point of view, it is very important to understand a couple of things. First, whether the theme is long-term in nature. Is it scalable? Is it the right time to invest in a concerned theme, or most of the run-up or stock prices movement has already happened? And what sort of risk that theme is bringing to my portfolio? And once the client has understood everything, then only he or she should go ahead and invest in a particular thematic product, rather than simply investing in a theme without doing the due diligence. So probably it is more complicated to invest in a theme compared to a sectoral fund or a market cap based fund. But I think this due diligence is required to understand what is your investment horizon, what is your expectations, what sort of run-up has already happened, and do you see a theme from a tactical point of view or from a long-term allocation point of view?
Right. So when constructing your portfolio, how can you add these thematic products to that? And typically, what kind of allocation should you have to these funds or to these products?
Yeah, so that will vary from investor to investor, because each investor will have a very different risk profile. But thematic products in an aggregate typically should have around 5 to 10% in your portfolio. And then you should also look what your remaining portfolio is all about. For example, if you look at Indian large cap funds, if it is already part of your portfolio, you'll have a good amount of exposure to BFSI. So how much BFSI can you add more? Whereas typically your existing funds may have lower allocation towards, let's say, a manufacturing segment. So probably you may go more aggressive towards allocation towards a manufacturing funds. It also depends on what sort of existing portfolio you have. But in a very a roundabout manner, it should typically form 5 to 10% of your entire portfolio.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Siddharth, for taking us through the finer details of thematic investing and chatting with us. That's all we have on the show today. Goodbye and thanks for watching.
Moneycontrol and Mirae Asset Mutual Fund present Passively Proactive. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.